When Michael discovers a locked metal box hidden behind insulation in the attic, while searching for Christmas decorations, he expects to find old jewelry or forgotten mementos. Instead, after weeks of curiosity, he finally opens it to find dozens of letters addressed to his wife Rachel. Letters from parents she claimed were dead, from siblings she said never existed, from a family she spent 15 years of marriage pretending doesn't exist, revealing that the orphan story she built their entire relationship on was an elaborate lie. The box was heavy, heavier than it looked. Michael Chen pulled it out from behind the pink insulation in the far corner of the attic, coughing as dust billowed around him. He'd been searching for the Christmas decorations. Rachel always stored them up here somewhere, and had accidentally dislodged a piece of drywall, revealing this metal box wedged into a space that had clearly been created specifically to hide it. It was about the size of a shoebox, but made of steel, grey and unmarked, except for a combination lock on the front. Michael turned it over in his hands, feeling the weight of it. Something substantial was inside. Papers, maybe, or jewelry, or cash. People hid all sorts of things in attics, but why would Rachel hide something? And why wouldn't she tell him about it? They'd been married for 15 years, together for 17. They'd met in graduate school, both studying architecture, both ambitious, both believing they'd change the world one building at a time. They'd fallen in love over late-night drafting sessions and too much coffee, had gotten married young at 25, against everyone's advice, had built a life together that felt solid and real and honest. Rachel was an open book. At least, Michael had always believed she was. She told him everything. About her day, her thoughts, her feelings. She'd never been one to keep secrets. In fact, she was almost compulsively honest, calling out servers who undercharged them, returning money when cashiers gave too much change, admitting when she'd made mistakes at work, even when no one would have known. So why did she have a locked box hidden in the attic? Michael carried it downstairs to his office, set it on his desk, stared at it. The combination lock was a 3-digit affair. He tried their anniversary. Nothing. Rachel's birthday. Nothing. His birthday. Still nothing. Random combinations. All unsuccessful. He could ask her about it. That would be the straightforward thing to do. "Hey, honey, I found this box in the attic. What's in it?" Simple. Direct. The kind of communication their marriage therapist had always praised them for having. But something stopped him. Some instinct that said once he asked about this box, something fundamental would change. That whatever was inside wasn't something Rachel wanted him to know about. That opening this particular door would lead somewhere he might not want to go. So Michael put the box in the bottom drawer of his desk, locked the drawer, told himself he'd forget about it. He didn't forget about it. For 3 weeks, the box sat in his desk drawer like a weight. Michael found himself thinking about it constantly, during meetings at work, while cooking dinner, in bed beside Rachel, watching her sleep, wondering what she was hiding. What secrets lived inside that steel container? He noticed things he'd never noticed before, the way Rachel sometimes seemed distant, even when she was physically present, the way she never wanted to talk about her childhood in any detail, the way she'd change the subject whenever the conversation turned to family history or ancestry, or where people came from. Michael had always attributed it to trauma. Rachel had told him she was an orphan, that her parents had died in a car accident when she was 17, that she'd been in foster care for a year before aging out of the system at 18, that she had no siblings, no extended family, no one. She'd been alone in the world until she met Michael. He'd felt protective of her because of that story, had wanted to give her the family she'd never had, had introduced her to his parents, his 3 siblings, his endless cousins and aunts and uncles. The Chen family had absorbed Rachel completely, treating her like one of their own. She'd become the daughter Michael's mother never had, the sister his siblings adored, part of the family in every way that mattered, and Rachel had seemed happy with that, had embraced the Chen family gatherings, had learned to make his grandmother's dumplings, had laughed at his father's terrible jokes, had fit in seamlessly, but now Michael wondered. Had it all been performance? Had Rachel been playing a role, pretending to be the orphan who'd found family when really she had family all along, family she'd deliberately hidden? The thoughts were toxic. Michael knew he was spiraling, knew he needed to either ask Rachel about the box or let it go. Couldn't keep torturing himself with speculation. He chose a third option. He decided to open the box. It took him 2 days to crack the combination. He tried every significant date he could think of. Rachel's graduation, the day they met, the day they got engaged. Nothing worked. Then, almost as an afterthought, he tried random 3-digit combinations based on patterns Rachel used for other passwords. 729. The lock clicked open. Michael's hands were shaking as he lifted the lid. Inside were letters. Dozens of them, maybe 100, all addressed to Rachel Chen, her married name, at various addresses. Some were old, postmarked from 15 years ago, right around when they'd gotten married. Others were recent. The most recent was dated 3 months ago. Michael pulled out a handful and looked at the return addresses. The same address appeared on almost all of them, an address in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, a place Rachel had never mentioned, a place Michael hadn't known she had any connection to. The name on the return address was Linda Morrison. Michael didn't recognize it. Didn't know who Linda Morrison was, or why she'd been writing to Rachel for 15 years. He opened the oldest letter first. The envelope was worn, the paper inside yellowed with age. The handwriting was feminine and desperate. "Rachel, please. I know you said you never want to hear from us again, but I'm your mother. I love you. We all love you. Whatever happened, whatever we did to make you leave, I'm sorry. Please come home. Please let us know you're okay. Your father is sick with worry. Your brothers ask about you every day. Please, sweetheart, please just call, let us know you're alive. Mom." Michael read the letter 3 times. Each time the words hit harder. Rachel's mother. Rachel's alive mother. The mother who supposedly died in a car accident. The mother Rachel had spent 15 years pretending didn't exist. Michael felt the room spinning. He grabbed the edge of his desk to steady himself. This couldn't be real. Rachel wouldn't lie about something this fundamental. Wouldn't pretend to be an orphan when she had living parents. Wouldn't cut off her entire family and never mention them. But the evidence was right here, in his hands. Undeniable. Michael opened another letter. This one was dated 5 years ago. "Rachel, I don't know if you're even reading these. You never respond, but I keep writing because I can't give up on my daughter. Your brother Tim graduated from college last month. He's an engineer now, just like you always wanted to be. He asked why his big sister wasn't there. I didn't know what to tell him. How do I explain that you don't want anything to do with us? That you've cut us out of your life completely? Please, Rachel, whatever we did, we can fix it. Just come home. Mom, your brother Tim." Rachel had a brother, maybe brothers, plural. The first letter had mentioned brothers. Rachel had siblings, living siblings, family she'd deliberately abandoned. Michael opened letter after letter. They spanned 15 years. Years of Rachel's mother begging her to come home, pleading for contact, asking what they'd done wrong, apologizing for things Michael didn't understand. The letters grew more desperate over time, then more resigned. The most recent ones had a defeated quality, as if Linda Morrison had finally accepted that her daughter was never coming back. But she kept writing anyway, kept sending letters to an address she must have had to work to find each time Rachel and Michael moved, kept hoping that someday Rachel would respond. She never had. Michael could tell because all the letters were here, unopened. Rachel had received them and hidden them without reading them, had maintained her wall of silence for 15 years. Why? Michael spent the entire afternoon in his office, reading through the letters. He organized them chronologically, creating a timeline of Linda Morrison's attempts to reach her daughter. The story they told was heartbreaking. In the beginning, the letters were frantic, panicked. Rachel had apparently left home suddenly at 22, right around the time she'd met Michael. Linda's early letters begged Rachel to explain what had happened, asked what the family had done to drive her away, pleaded for just one phone call to confirm she was safe. After a year of silence, the tone shifted. Linda wrote about mundane family news, as if trying to keep Rachel connected through normalcy. Your brother Tim made the soccer team. Your father fixed the porch finally. The neighbors asked about you. Small details meant to remind Rachel of home. Around year 3, desperation crept back in. Linda mentioned health problems. Rachel's father had diabetes, was struggling. She mentioned financial troubles. She mentioned Rachel's younger brother struggling in school, needing his big sister. Every letter was a plea disguised as an update. By year 7, acceptance began to replace desperation. I don't know if you'll ever read these. I don't know if you even get them. But I can't stop writing. You're my daughter. I love you. That will never change, no matter how long you're gone. The most recent letters from the past year were the hardest to read. They were short, almost businesslike, but the love beneath the words was still there, just buried under layers of pain and resignation. Rachel, your father died 6 months ago. Diabetes complications. He asked for you at the end. Wanted to know if you'd ever come home. I told him you would. I lied to make him feel better. The funeral is next Tuesday. I know you won't come, but I wanted you to know. He loved you. We all love you. Always. Mum. Michael's hands were shaking. Rachel's father had died 6 months ago and she'd never mentioned it, had never asked for time off work, had never seemed sad or distracted. She'd gone about her life as if nothing had happened, because to her, nothing had happened. The man was already dead to her, had been dead to her for 15 years. Michael found other letters mixed in, not just from Linda Morrison, from people who signed themselves Tim, Josh, Sarah, Rachel's siblings, 3 of them. Michael did the math. Tim was probably mid-20s now. Josh early 20s. Sarah maybe 19 or 20. Kids when Rachel left. Adults now. Adults who'd grown up without their big sister. Tim's letters were angry at first, then sad, then distant. He'd tried to find Rachel on social media. She'd blocked him. He'd tried calling. She'd changed her number. He'd tried visiting one of the addresses he'd found. Rachel had already moved. Josh's letters were simpler, more direct. I miss you. Please come home. Why did you leave us? He'd written them in college-ruled notebook paper, the handwriting young and uncertain. He'd stopped writing after 5 years. Given up. Sarah's letters were the most recent. She'd only started writing 3 years ago when she was 17. She wrote, I barely remember you. I was 6 when you left. But Mum has pictures. She says you're smart and brave and kind. She says you had reasons for leaving. I want to understand. I want to know my sister. Please write back, please. Rachel had never written back, had hidden all these letters in a steel box in the attic, had built an entire false identity as an orphan, had lied to Michael for 15 years. Michael heard the garage door opening. Rachel was home from work. He quickly gathered the letters and shoved them back in the box, locked it, put it back in the desk drawer. His heart was hammering. He didn't know what to do with this information. Didn't know how to confront Rachel, didn't know if he should. Michael, Rachel's voice echoed through the house. You home? In my office. He tried to sound normal, failed. His voice came out strained and strange. Rachel appeared in the doorway moments later. She was beautiful as always. Long dark hair pulled back, still wearing her work clothes, smiling at him with genuine warmth. His wife, the woman he'd loved for 17 years, the woman he apparently didn't know at all. You okay? You sound weird. Fine, just work stress. Rachel came closer, concern on her face. She touched his forehead. You feel warm. Are you getting sick? Michael couldn't help it. He pulled away from her touch. The first time in their entire marriage he'd recoiled from physical contact. Rachel noticed immediately. Her face fell. What's wrong? Nothing. I'm fine. Just need some space. Rachel stepped back, hurt flashing across her face. Okay. Well, I'm going to start dinner. Come down when you're ready. She left. Michael sat alone in his office, staring at the desk drawer that held the box. That held Rachel's secrets. That held evidence of a betrayal so fundamental he didn't know how to process it. Rachel had let him believe she was an orphan, had attended Chen family gatherings and smiled and laughed, while knowing she had a family of her own that she'd abandoned, had let Michael's mother treat her like a daughter, while her own mother wrote desperate letters begging for contact. The cruelty of it was staggering, not just to Michael but to her own family, to parents who'd lost their daughter, to siblings who'd grown up without her, to people who loved her and had no idea why she'd left. What had happened? What could possibly have happened to make Rachel cut off her entire family? To make her lie so completely about who she was? Michael needed answers, but asking Rachel would mean admitting he'd opened the box, would mean confessing he'd violated her privacy, would mean starting a conversation that would inevitably destroy their marriage. Because how do you come back from this? How do you rebuild trust when the foundation was lies? When your entire understanding of your spouse was based on false information? Michael didn't know. But he couldn't keep this secret. Couldn't pretend he didn't know. Couldn't sit across from Rachel at dinner and act like everything was normal when nothing would ever be normal again. He went downstairs. Rachel was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for stir-fry. their normal Tuesday routine. Everything exactly as it should be, except nothing was as it should be. "Rachel, we need to talk." She looked up, immediately sensing the seriousness in his tone. "What's wrong?" "I found something. In the attic. A box. A locked box." Rachel went very still. The color drained from her face. "You opened it?" "Yes." You had no right to lie to me for 15 years. Michael's voice rose. "Your parents aren't dead, Rachel. Your family exists. I read the letters. All of them. Your mother has been writing to you for 15 years, and you never responded. You let me believe you were an orphan. You let my family adopt you as one of their own, while your real family begged you to come home. How could you do that?" Rachel set down the knife carefully. Her hands were shaking. "You don't understand. Then explain it to me. Explain why you lied. Explain why you abandoned your family. Explain why our entire marriage is built on a foundation of lies. It's not that simple. Then make it simple. Tell me the truth. For once in our entire relationship, tell me the actual truth about who you are. If this story has touched you so far, please leave your like, share in the comments if you've ever discovered a secret that changed everything, and send this to someone who understands that honesty is the foundation of every real relationship. Without truth, love becomes just another beautiful lie. Rachel stood frozen in the kitchen, staring at Michael like he'd become a stranger. Her face was pale, her breathing rapid. For a long moment she didn't speak, just stood there processing the fact that her 15-year secret had been exposed. "Sit down," she finally said. Her voice was flat, empty. "If you want the truth, sit down. It's going to take a while." Michael sat at the kitchen table. Rachel poured herself a glass of wine with shaking hands, drank half of it in one long swallow. Then she sat across from him, her face a carefully controlled mask. "My parents aren't dead," she began. "Obviously you know that now. They're alive. In Cedar Rapids. They've been alive this whole time. Why did you lie?" "Because the truth was too complicated, too painful, too humiliating." Rachel took another drink. "I didn't just leave my family, Michael. I escaped them." "Escaped them? What does that mean?" "It means they were suffocating me, controlling every aspect of my life. It means I grew up in a religious household so strict it was practically a cult. It means I was never allowed to make my own choices, have my own thoughts, be my own person." Michael had heard stories like this before. Controlling parents, religious extremism. But Rachel had never mentioned anything like that, had never given any indication her childhood was traumatic. "Tell me everything," he said, "from the beginning." So Rachel did. And the story she told was nothing like what Michael had imagined. She'd grown up in Cedar Rapids in a fundamentalist Christian household. Her father, Ronald, had been a deacon at their church. Her mother, Linda, had been the perfect pastor's wife. The family had been deeply involved in a community that believed in strict gender roles, purity culture, and absolute parental authority. Rachel had been the oldest of 4 children, the example, the one who was supposed to be perfect. She'd been homeschooled until high school, wasn't allowed to have friends outside the church, wasn't allowed to date, wasn't allowed to wear pants or cut her hair short or listen to secular music. "I wasn't a person," Rachel said. "I was a doll they dressed up and showed off. Proof that their parenting style worked. Proof that godly submission created perfect daughters." But Rachel hadn't been perfect. She'd been curious, had secretly read books from the public library, had questioned doctrine, had wanted more than the life her parents had planned for her. Marriage at 18 to an approved church member, immediate children, a lifetime of submission. When I told them I wanted to go to college, they said no, said women didn't need higher education, that my purpose was to be a wife and mother. When I insisted, they told me if I left for college, I'd be dead to them, cut off completely. I'd be choosing worldliness over family. But you went anyway. I went anyway. Got a scholarship to Iowa State, packed my bags and left. My father stood at the door and told me if I walked out, I could never come back, that I was breaking covenant with God and family, that I was choosing sin. Rachel's voice was steady, but Michael could see the pain beneath it, the years-old wound still raw. I thought they'd come around. Thought once they saw I could be successful and still be a good person, they'd accept me. But they didn't. They sent letters saying I was living in sin, that I needed to repent and come home. That college was filling my head with worldly lies. So you cut them off. Not at first. I tried to maintain contact for the first 2 years, but every conversation was an argument. Every letter was a guilt trip. They couldn't accept that I'd chosen a different path, couldn't see me as anything other than their rebellious daughter who'd turned away from God. Rachel finished her wine and poured another glass. Michael had never seen her drink like this, had never seen her this raw and exposed. Then I met you, and you were everything they'd told me men would never be. Kind, respectful, supportive of my ambitions. You saw me as an equal, not as a subordinate. You encouraged my career instead of trying to control it. You were proof that everything my parents had taught me was wrong, so you erased them, pretended they didn't exist. I created a new identity, one where I wasn't the rebellious daughter who'd disappointed her family. I became an orphan, someone with a tragic past instead of a shameful one, someone who deserved sympathy instead of judgment. Michael tried to process this, tried to understand how the woman he'd loved for 17 years could have hidden something this enormous. But Rachel, the letters your mother kept writing, for 15 years she never gave up on you. I know. You know? You read them? No. I never opened them. But I knew she was writing. I knew they were trying to contact me. I couldn't face it. Couldn't face the guilt and the pain and the accusations, so I hid them, pretended they didn't exist, just like I pretended my family didn't exist. But they do exist. Your father died 6 months ago, and you didn't even go to the funeral. Rachel's mask cracked. Tears spilled down her face. I know. I read the obituary online. I saw the funeral announcement. I thought about going, thought about showing up in the back of the church and paying my respects. But I couldn't. Couldn't face my mother and siblings, couldn't explain 15 years of silence. They loved you. They still love you. Your mother's letters, Rachel, they're heartbreaking. She never stopped hoping you'd come back. I know, Rachel's voice broke. I know they loved me in their way, but their love was conditional, dependent on me being who they wanted me to be. I couldn't live like that, couldn't sacrifice myself on the altar of their expectations. Michael stood up and began pacing. His mind was racing. Everything he'd thought he knew about Rachel was wrong. She wasn't an orphan, she was a runaway, someone who'd chosen independence over family, someone who'd been running from her past for 15 years. Why didn't you tell me? Why lie? Because I was ashamed, because I thought you'd judge me. Because I thought if you knew the truth, that I'd abandoned my family, that I'd cut off my parents and siblings completely. You wouldn't want me anymore. That's not fair. You didn't give me a chance to understand. You just lied and kept lying for 15 years. I know, and I'm sorry. But Michael, you have to understand, my family wasn't normal. They weren't just strict or religious. They were controlling and manipulative. They used God and guilt to keep me trapped. Leaving them was the healthiest thing I ever did. Maybe, but creating a false identity, pretending to be an orphan, letting my family embrace you while your real family mourned you. Rachel, that's not healthy. That's running away. What was I supposed to do? Tell you the truth and risk you thinking I was a terrible person? Risk you taking their side? I would have understood. I would have supported you. Would you? Really? Rachel stood up too, facing him across the kitchen. You come from a close family, Michael. The Chens are tight-knit and loving and supportive. You've never had to choose between family and self. You've never had to escape. How could you possibly understand what that's like? She wasn't wrong. Michael had grown up with parents who encouraged his ambitions, siblings who supported his choices, a family that celebrated independence instead of punishing it. He couldn't imagine having to cut off his family to be free. But he also couldn't imagine lying about it for 15 years. I need time, Michael said. I need to process this. I need to figure out if I can trust you again. Michael, please. You lied to me about who you are, about your fundamental identity, about your family. You let me build my entire understanding of you on false information. How am I supposed to just accept that? I'm still the same person. I'm still the woman you fell in love with. Are you? Because the woman I fell in love with was honest, or at least I thought she was. Now I don't know what's real and what's performance. Rachel's face crumpled. Please don't do this. Please don't let my past destroy our future. You already did that, the moment you decided to lie instead of trust me with the truth. Michael slept in the guest room that night, couldn't bring himself to lie beside Rachel, couldn't pretend everything was normal when his entire world had been turned upside down. He lay awake for hours, replaying their conversation, trying to reconcile the Rachel he'd known with the Rachel who'd hidden her entire family. trying to understand how someone could lie so completely for so long. Part of him understood. He could see how a controlling religious upbringing would drive someone to desperate measures, could see how shame and fear might lead to creating a false identity, could even see how once the lie was established, it would be increasingly difficult to tell the truth. But understanding didn't erase the betrayal, didn't make the 15 years of deception hurt less, didn't restore the trust that had been shattered. The next morning, Rachel was already up when Michael came downstairs. She'd clearly been crying. Her eyes were red and swollen, but she'd also clearly been preparing. Documents covered the kitchen table. "What's all this?" Michael asked. "Proof. Evidence. Everything I should have shown you years ago." Rachel gestured to the papers. "Birth certificates, church bulletins with my family's names, letters from before I cut contact, photos. Everything that proves my story is true." Michael sat down and began looking through the documents. There was Rachel's birth certificate, Rachel Ann Morrison, born in Cedar Rapids, to Ronald and Linda Morrison. Church directories listing the Morrison family, Ronald, Linda, Rachel, Timothy, Joshua, Sarah. Newsletters from their church describing various events and ministries. And photos, so many photos. Rachel as a child, wearing long dresses and braided hair. Rachel as a teenager, surrounded by church members. Rachel's high school graduation photo. She looked so young, so different from the woman Michael had married. "This was me," Rachel said, pointing to the photos, "before I left, before I became the person you know." Michael studied the photos. The girl in them looked uncomfortable, constrained, like she was playing a role that didn't fit. Nothing like the confident, ambitious woman he'd married. "Why didn't you show me these before?" "Because I was ashamed. Because I didn't want you to see where I came from. I wanted to be the woman I became, not the girl I was. But Rachel, your past is part of who you are. You can't just erase it. I tried. For 15 years I tried, and it worked. I built a good life, a successful career, a happy marriage. I became someone new. Built on lies. Built on survival." Rachel's voice was fierce. "Michael, you have to understand, staying connected to my family would have destroyed me. They would have kept trying to pull me back, kept guilting me, kept trying to force me into their mold. Cutting them off was the only way to be free." Michael wanted to argue, but he'd spent half the night researching religious fundamentalism, reading stories from others who'd escaped controlling families. The patterns were consistent. Attempted reconnection usually meant renewed attempts at control. Boundaries were violated. Independence was attacked. People who left were viewed as projects to be reclaimed rather than adults to be respected. "I believe you," Michael said. "I believe your family was controlling. I believe leaving was necessary. But Rachel, the lie, that's what I can't get past. You could have told me the truth. Could have said, I have a family, but we're estranged. You didn't have to pretend to be an orphan." I was afraid. Afraid you'd want me to reconcile with them. Afraid you'd think I was cold or heartless for cutting them off. Afraid you'd judge me for choosing myself over family. "I wouldn't have—" "Wouldn't you?" Rachel challenged. "Be honest, Michael. If I'd told you on our third date that I'd abandoned my family and refused all contact, what would you have thought?" Michael was quiet. He wanted to say he would have understood, would have supported her, but he had to admit, hearing that someone had completely cut off their entire family would have been a red flag, would have made him wonder what was wrong with her, would have made him question whether she was capable of commitment. "Maybe I would have judged you," he admitted. "Maybe I would have thought there was something wrong with you for being that extreme. But Rachel, we could have worked through it. You could have explained, given me a chance to understand. Or you could have left, could have decided I was too damaged, too complicated, and then I would have been alone again. I couldn't risk that, not after finally finding someone who saw me as worthy." The first devastating revelation hit Michael then. Rachel had lied because she didn't trust him. Not really. She'd loved him, but she hadn't trusted him with her truth. Had believed, deep down, that he'd abandon her if he knew who she really was. That hurt worse than the lie itself. The idea that after 17 years together, Rachel still didn't trust him enough to be vulnerable, still protected herself by hiding, still believed she needed to perform to be loved. "I'm not your parents," Michael said quietly. "I would never demand you be someone you're not, would never try to control you, would never make my love conditional. I know that now. But then, 17 years ago when we met. I didn't know that. I just escaped people who claimed to love me, but only loved a version of me they'd created. I couldn't trust love. Couldn't believe it was real unless I controlled the narrative. So you controlled it by lying? Yes. Rachel met his eyes. I lied because I was scared and damaged and didn't know how to trust. I created a false identity because it felt safer than revealing my real one. And then I maintained that lie because I didn't know how to admit what I'd done without losing everything. Michael looked at the documents spread across the table, evidence of a family Rachel had erased, of a past she'd hidden, of a lie she'd maintained through their entire relationship. Your siblings, he said, Tim and Josh and Sarah, they grew up without you. They wrote you letters begging you to come back. What about them? They didn't do anything wrong. Rachel's face crumpled. I know. Leaving them was the hardest part. But they were children, teenagers. They were still under our parents' control. If I'd stayed in contact with them, my parents would have used them to get to me, would have manipulated them into trying to bring me back. They're adults now. Sarah's in college. Tim and Josh are grown men. They're not under your parents' control anymore. I know. I thought about reaching out when they got older. But by then, so much time had passed. How do you explain 15 years of silence? How do you rebuild relationships that have been dead that long? You start by being honest, by apologizing, by admitting you were wrong. Was I wrong? Rachel challenged. Was I wrong to save myself? To choose freedom over family obligation? No. But you were wrong to lie to me. Wrong to hide this from your husband. Wrong to let me believe something fundamentally false about who you are. They sat in tense silence. The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, suffocating. All the air used up by revelations and recriminations. What do you want me to do? Rachel finally asked. I can't change the past. Can't undo 15 years of lies. All I can do is tell you the truth now and hope it's enough. I don't know what I want. I don't know if truth is enough. I don't know if we can come back from this. Please don't say that. Please don't let this destroy us. You already destroyed us. The moment you decided our marriage could be built on lies. They went to couples therapy, Michael insisted. If there was any chance of saving their marriage, they needed professional help. Needed someone objective to help them navigate this betrayal. The therapist, Dr. Sarah Kim, listened to their story without judgment, heard Rachel's explanation of her controlling family and her escape, heard Michael's pain at discovering 15 years of lies. She sat with both truths, that Rachel had valid reasons for leaving her family, and that lying to Michael was still a betrayal. Rachel, I want to understand something, Dr. Kim said during their third session. You've described your family as controlling and manipulative. You've explained why you needed to leave. But can you help me understand why you felt you needed to lie to Michael specifically? Why couldn't you trust him with the truth? Rachel was quiet for a long time. Then she said softly, because I didn't trust myself. I was afraid that if I admitted my family existed, I'd eventually give in to guilt. I'd eventually respond to the letters. I'd eventually go back. Creating the orphan story wasn't just about lying to Michael. It was about making it impossible for myself to return. If my family was dead, I couldn't go back to them no matter how guilty I felt. So the lie was a protective mechanism, for yourself more than anything. Yes, I was protecting myself from my own weakness, from the part of me that still loved them and missed them, and wondered if maybe I'd overreacted. The orphan story killed that part, made it impossible to give in. Michael hadn't thought about it that way, hadn't considered that Rachel's lie might have been more about her own internal struggle than about deceiving him. But Rachel, Dr. Kim continued, by protecting yourself from your family, you also created distance from Michael. You made it impossible for him to fully know you, to support you through the ongoing struggle of having cut ties with family. You isolated yourself. I know. I see that now. At the time, I thought I was just being private, protecting both of us from my messy past. Now I understand I was actually preventing real intimacy. Dr. Kim turned to Michael. And you, how does it feel to know that Rachel's lie was primarily about her own protection rather than about you? It doesn't change that she lied, doesn't change that I built my life with someone I didn't actually know, but... Michael paused, searching for words. I guess it makes it feel less malicious. Not better, but different. Like she wasn't trying to hurt me. She was just trying to survive. Can you hold both truths? That Rachel was protecting herself and that doing so hurt you? Michael thought about it. Could he accept that Rachel's lie had come from trauma rather than malice, that she'd been a wounded person trying to heal by erasing her past, that her deception, while wrong, wasn't meant to harm him? I don't know, I'm trying, but it's hard to trust her now. Hard to believe anything she says when I know she's capable of maintaining such an elaborate lie. Rachel, what would help Michael trust you again? I don't know, I've told him everything now, shown him all the evidence, answered every question honestly. I don't know what else I can do except continue being honest going forward. What about your family? Dr. Kim asked. Your mother? Your siblings? They're still writing to you, still hoping for reconciliation. Have you considered responding? Rachel's face went pale. No, I can't. I can't open that door. Why not? Because if I contact them, they'll see it as an opening. They'll push for full reconciliation. They'll want me to come back into the fold, attend church, pretend the last 15 years didn't happen. I can't do that. I won't do that. What if you set clear boundaries? What if you reached out on your terms, making it clear that reconciliation doesn't mean returning to who you were? They wouldn't respect boundaries. That's not how they operate. Have you tried? Have you given them a chance to interact with adult Rachel instead of teenage Rachel? No, but I know them. I know how they think. Do you? Dr. Kim challenged gently. You haven't spoken to them in 15 years. People change. Your siblings are adults now. Your mother has lost her husband and her oldest daughter. Maybe they've changed too. Maybe they'd be willing to accept you as you are now. Rachel shook her head. It's too risky. If I open that door and they're still the same, still trying to control me, still disapproving of my choices, it'll destroy me all over again. Michael listened to this exchange with growing understanding. Rachel wasn't just protecting her independence. She was protecting herself from hope, from the possibility that reconciliation might be possible, because if it was possible, and she didn't pursue it, she'd have to live with that guilt. Better to believe reconciliation was impossible than to admit she was choosing not to try. Rachel, Michael said carefully, I think you need to reach out. Not for them. For you. You're carrying 15 years of guilt and pain. You're still running from them even though they can't actually hurt you anymore. You need closure. I can't. You can. And I think you need to. Because this secret, this hidden family, it's still controlling you. You're still letting them define your life by actively avoiding them. That's not freedom. That's just a different kind of prison. The second revelation crashed over both of them. Rachel had never actually escaped her family. She'd just found a different way to be controlled by them. Instead of obeying their rules, she'd built her entire life in opposition to them. But opposition was still a form of connection. She was still letting them dictate her choices, just in reverse. True freedom would mean being able to acknowledge them without being controlled by them, being able to have contact without being consumed, being able to be their daughter without being their possession. I'm not ready, Rachel said. You've been not ready for 15 years, Michael pointed out. Maybe you'll never feel ready. Maybe you just have to do it anyway. After that session, Michael made a decision. He contacted Linda Morrison, used the return address from the letters, sent an email explaining who he was, Rachel's husband, and that he wanted to talk. Linda responded within an hour. They set up a phone call for that weekend. Michael didn't tell Rachel what he was doing, didn't want to give her a chance to stop him. This needed to happen, for Rachel's healing and for his own understanding. He needed to meet the family Rachel had erased, needed to see if they were the monsters she'd described or just flawed people who'd made mistakes. The phone rang Saturday morning. Michael answered before he could lose his nerve. Hello? The voice on the other end was tentative, hopeful. Is this Michael? Yes, Mrs. Morrison? Linda, please. Thank you for calling. Thank you for... Her voice broke. Thank you for not forgetting about us. I only found out about you a few weeks ago. Rachel never told me she had family. I know. She cut us off completely. We've been trying to reach her for 15 years. I'm so grateful you contacted me. Is Rachel okay? She's fine, physically, emotionally, that's complicated. Can I talk to her? Can I hear her voice? It's been so long, please. Michael's heart broke for this woman, this mother who'd lost her daughter and spent 15 years hoping. I don't know if Rachel's ready for that, but I wanted to hear your side, wanted to understand what happened. Rachel says you were controlling. That leaving was her only option. Linda was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was thick with tears. We were strict, very strict. We raised our children in a particular way, with particular beliefs. Looking back, I can see we were too rigid, too controlling. But Michael, we loved her. We love her still. We never wanted her gone. We just wanted her to be safe, to be godly, to be who you wanted her to be," Michael finished. "Yes," Linda admitted. "We wanted her to be who we thought she should be. We were wrong. We know that now. But by the time we understood, she was already gone." Michael talked to Linda Morrison for 2 hours. She told him about Rachel's childhood, the good parts Rachel never mentioned, family camping trips, Rachel's love of drawing, her talent for math, the way she'd helped homeschool her younger siblings, the way she'd been kind and patient and creative. "She was a wonderful big sister," Linda said. "Tim and Josh and Sarah adored her. When she left, they were devastated. They kept asking when she was coming home. I didn't know what to tell them. How do you explain that their sister chose to leave, that we drove her away? Rachel says you threatened to disown her if she went to college. Her father did. I should have stopped him, should have stood up for her, but I was afraid too, afraid of going against Ronald, afraid of what the church would say if we let our daughter pursue worldly education. I was a coward." Michael heard real remorse in Linda's voice. Real regret. This wasn't a woman who was unrepentant. This was a woman who'd spent 15 years wishing she could undo her mistakes. "Ronald died 6 months ago," Linda continued. "Diabetes. He was only 63. At the end, he asked for Rachel, wanted to apologize, wanted to tell her he was proud of her. I told him I'd find her, but I couldn't. She'd moved again, and I didn't have her new address yet. She knew he died. She saw the obituary." "She did?" Linda's voice rose with hope. "She's been checking? She's been keeping track of us?" "I don't think so. I think it was just chance, or maybe a Google search. I don't know. But she knew, and she didn't come to the funeral. I understand why. We hurt her so badly. I don't blame her for staying away." Michael was surprised by Linda's grace. He'd expected defensiveness, blame, accusations that Rachel was the problem. Instead, Linda took responsibility, admitted fault, expressed genuine love and regret. "Mrs. Morrison, Linda, Rachel says you were part of a fundamentalist church, that the teachings were extreme. They were. We believed, we were taught, that strict control was love, that breaking a child's will was godly, that absolute obedience was necessary for salvation. Looking back, I can see how toxic that was, how it damaged our children. Tim struggled with anxiety for years. Josh rebelled as soon as he turned 18. Sarah left the church completely. And Rachel left all of us. Do you still attend that church?" "No, we left about 10 years ago, after Rachel cut contact and we realized our other children were suffering too. We found a different church, less rigid, more focused on love than rules. We've been healing, slowly, learning to parent our younger children differently, but we can't undo what we did to Rachel." Michael felt something shift in his understanding. Rachel had frozen her family in time, had assumed they'd never change, never grow, never recognize their mistakes, but they had changed. Linda had changed, even Ronald before he died had apparently changed, but Rachel would never know that because she'd cut off all communication, had refused to read the letters, had maintained her wall so thoroughly that she had no idea her family wasn't the same family she'd left. "Your other children," Michael said. "Tim, Josh, Sarah. Can I talk to them too?" "Of course. They'd love to talk to you. They've been desperate to know anything about Rachel, to know if she's happy, if she's okay, if she ever thinks about them." Linda arranged a conference call for the next day. Michael found himself talking to 3 adults who'd grown up without their big sister. They were nothing like the religious zealots Rachel had described. Tim was an engineer, married with 2 kids. Josh was in graduate school. Sarah was pre-med at university. All 3 had left the fundamentalist church their parents had raised them in. All 3 had pursued higher education. All 3 had built lives that looked nothing like what their parents had originally planned for them. And all 3 had done it with their parents' eventual support. "Mom and Dad changed after Rachel left," Tim explained. "I think losing her broke something in them, made them realize their methods were driving us all away. By the time Josh and I were old enough for college, they didn't fight it. They actually encouraged it. They learned from their mistakes with Rachel," Sarah added. "They told us they'd been too strict, too controlling. They apologized and tried to do better." "Does Rachel know any of this?" Josh asked. "Does she know we're not the family she left anymore?" "No. She never read your letters. She hid them all, never responded. "We figured," Tim said sadly, "but we kept writing anyway. Kept hoping that someday she'd read them, that she'd know we still loved her, that we never stopped thinking about her." Michael felt tears burning his eyes. These were good people, flawed people who'd been raised in a toxic environment but had managed to break free, who loved their sister and had spent 15 years trying to reach her. Rachel needed to know, needed to understand that her family wasn't the threat she remembered, that they'd grown and changed. That reconciliation might actually be possible, but how do you tell someone that the narrative they've built their entire adult life on is wrong, that they've been running from ghosts, that the family they've mourned has been trying to reach them all along? Michael returned home with this knowledge weighing on him. Rachel was in the living room reading. She looked up when he entered. "Where have you been all weekend?" "I talked to your family." Rachel went white. The book fell from her hands. "For what?" "I contacted your mother, talked to her and your siblings. Rachel, they've changed. They're not the people you left. They've grown. Your parents left that church. Your siblings all went to college with your parents' support. They're not trying to control you anymore. They just want to know you're okay. You had no right. You gave up the right to control this narrative when you lied to me for 15 years, Michael said firmly. I needed to understand, needed to hear their side. And Rachel, their side is very different from yours. Of course it is. They're liars. No, they're not. They're honest about their mistakes. Your mother admits she was too strict, admits she should have supported you. Your siblings just want their sister back. Rachel, they love you. They've always loved you. If they loved me, they would have let me go, would have respected my choice to leave. They did let you go. They never tried to force you back. They just kept writing, kept hoping. That's not control, that's love. Rachel stood up, her face flushed with anger. You don't understand. You didn't grow up with them. You didn't feel that suffocation, that constant judgment, that... You're right, I didn't. But Rachel, that was 15 years ago. People change. You've changed. Why can't they have changed too? Because if they've changed, then I've been wrong. I've been running from nothing. I've been hiding from people who actually love me. I've wasted 15 years. Her voice broke. She sank back onto the couch, putting her head in her hands. I've wasted 15 years. If this story moved you, if you understand that forgiveness is possible even after years of pain, please share it. Like this video. Comment with your thoughts about family, estrangement, and the courage it takes to rebuild broken relationships. Because sometimes the hardest thing we can do is admit we might have been wrong. Michael sat beside Rachel on the couch, didn't touch her but stayed close. Let her cry, let her process, let her feel the weight of 15 years of unnecessary separation. I was so sure, Rachel said between sobs. So sure they were the problem. So sure I needed to cut them off completely to be free. But if they've changed, if they've been trying to reach me all along, then I'm the villain. I'm the one who refused reconciliation. I'm the one who kept us apart. You're not a villain. You were a scared 22-year-old who made a choice based on the information and emotional resources you had at the time. You did what you thought you needed to do to survive. But I didn't just survive. I thrived. I built a successful career, a happy marriage, a good life, and I did it all while they mourned me, while my mother wrote letters begging me to come home, while my siblings wondered what they'd done wrong. I caused them 15 years of pain for nothing. Not for nothing. You got your freedom. You got your education. You got to become who you wanted to be. That wasn't nothing. But I could have had both. Could have had freedom and family. If I'd been willing to set boundaries instead of cutting them off completely, maybe. Or maybe you needed those 15 years of complete separation to become strong enough to set boundaries. Maybe you needed to build your own identity before you could risk reconnecting. Rachel looked at Michael with red, swollen eyes. When did you become so wise? I've been talking to your family, to people who love you and have spent 15 years thinking about what went wrong and how they could have done better. They've had a lot of time to develop insight. Do they hate me for leaving, for never responding? No, they understand. They take responsibility for driving you away. They just want a chance to know you now, as you are, not as who they wanted you to be. Rachel was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I don't know if I can do it. Don't know if I can face them after 15 years. You don't have to decide right now. You can take your time. But Rachel, I think you need to read the letters, all of them. See what your mother has been saying. Understand what your siblings have been asking for. Give yourself a chance to see them as they are, not as you remember them. Over the next week, Rachel read through all the letters. She did it alone, locked in their bedroom, crying through most of them. Michael gave her space, let her process at her own pace, but he also made sure she knew he was there, that he supported her no matter what she decided. One evening, Rachel emerged from the bedroom holding the most recent letter from Linda. "My father asked for me at the end. Wanted to apologize. Your mother told me. I could have given him that, could have let him say what he needed to say. Instead, he died wondering if his daughter would ever forgive him. You didn't know he was dying. You didn't know he'd changed. Because I refused to find out. I was so committed to my narrative. They're the bad guys, I'm the victim, that I couldn't see anything else. Couldn't consider that maybe we were all just broken people doing our best." Michael saw her struggle, saw her trying to reconcile 15 years of certainty with new information that contradicted everything she'd believed. It was painful to watch, but also necessary. Rachel needed to grieve, not just for her father's death, but for 15 lost years, for relationships she could have had, for healing she'd prevented. "I want to call my mother," Rachel said finally, "but I don't know what to say. Start with hello, the rest will come." They called together, Michael holding Rachel's hand for support. Linda answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting by the phone for 15 years. "Hello? Mum." Rachel's voice broke on the word. "It's me, it's Rachel." The sound Linda made was inhuman, pure joy and pain and relief all compressed into one sob. "Rachel, oh my God, Rachel, you're really there. You're really calling. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. For everything, for leaving, for not responding, for 15 years of silence. I'm sorry. You have nothing to be sorry for. Nothing. We drove you away. We were too strict, too controlling, too—" Linda was crying too hard to continue. They cried together for a long time. Mother and daughter, separated by 15 years and hundreds of miles, but connected by a phone line, and finally, by honesty. When they could both speak again, Linda said, "Tell me everything. Tell me about your life, about Michael, about who you've become." So Rachel did. She talked for 2 hours, telling her mother everything she'd missed, her career, her marriage, her travels, her accomplishments, the life she'd built from nothing. And Linda listened without judgment, without trying to correct or control or push Rachel back into a mold. She just listened and celebrated and expressed genuine pride in the woman her daughter had become. "Can I meet him?" Linda asked. "Michael, can I meet the man who brought you back to us?" They arranged a visit. Linda would fly out in 2 weeks. She'd stay with them for a weekend. It would be awkward and emotional, and probably difficult, but it would be a beginning. Rachel's siblings called the next day. Each conversation was unique. Tim was cautious but warm. Josh was emotional. Sarah was ecstatic, talking so fast Rachel could barely keep up. They made plans. Tim would visit in the spring with his family. Sarah wanted to come sooner, maybe during her winter break. Josh offered to meet them halfway in Denver if Rachel wasn't ready to come back to Cedar Rapids yet. Slowly, carefully, Rachel began rebuilding relationships with the family she'd lost. It wasn't easy. There were awkward moments, painful conversations about the past, disagreements about religion and lifestyle and choices, but there was also love, genuine love that had survived 15 years of silence. Michael watched his wife bloom, watched her become lighter, freer, more whole. The guilt she'd been carrying, the weight of her secret, lifted gradually. She laughed more, slept better, seemed more present in their marriage, and their marriage began to heal too. The trust Michael had lost started rebuilding. Not quickly, not easily, but steadily. Rachel demonstrated her commitment to honesty. She answered every question. She shared things she'd never shared before. She let Michael see all of her, not just the carefully curated version she'd been presenting for 15 years. They went to therapy weekly, worked through the betrayal, worked through Rachel's trauma, worked through Michael's pain. Dr. Kim guided them through the difficult process of rebuilding after such a fundamental breach of trust. "Trust isn't rebuilt all at once," Dr. Kim said during one session. "It's rebuilt in small moments. Each time Rachel chooses honesty over deception. Each time Michael chooses to believe her. Each time you both choose vulnerability over protection. That's how you heal." 6 months after the box was opened, Linda came to visit. Michael answered the door to find a small woman with graying hair and Rachel's eyes. She looked nervous, hopeful, scared. "Mrs. Morrison," Michael said. Welcome. I'm Michael. Linda, please. She smiled tentatively. Thank you for calling me, for giving me this chance. Rachel's inside. She's nervous. So am I. Linda laughed shakily. I've been imagining this moment for 15 years. Now that it's here, I don't know what to do. Just be yourself. That's all she needs. Rachel appeared in the hallway behind Michael. Mother and daughter stared at each other. 15 years collapsed into one moment. Then Rachel moved forward and Linda moved forward, and they were hugging, both crying, holding on to each other like they'd never let go. I'm sorry, they both said at the same time. Then laughed. Then cried harder. Michael left them alone. They needed time. Time to talk. Time to cry. Time to begin healing wounds that had festered for 15 years. That evening, the three of them had dinner together. It was strange at first, stilted conversation and long pauses, but gradually it became easier. Linda asked about Michael's work. Michael asked about Rachel's siblings. Rachel asked about her father, really asked, not avoiding the topic for the first time. Linda told stories about Ronald, about how he'd changed after Rachel left, about how he'd questioned everything he'd believed, about how he'd tried to be a better father to their younger children, about how he'd wanted to find Rachel and apologize, but hadn't known how. He wrote you letters too, Linda said, after he got sick, after he knew he was dying. He wrote them but never sent them. Didn't think you'd read them. I have them at home. I can send them if you want. I want them, Rachel said. I want to know what he would have said. Over the weekend, Rachel and Linda talked through 15 years of pain. They didn't agree on everything. Linda still believed things Rachel didn't, still attended church though a different, gentler one, still held values Rachel had rejected. But they found common ground, found love that transcended disagreement, found a way to be family despite their differences. On Sunday evening, as Michael drove Linda to the airport, she said, "Thank you for opening that box. Thank you for forcing this confrontation. Rachel would never have done it on her own. She'd have kept running forever. I almost didn't open it, almost respected her privacy. I'm glad you didn't. Some secrets need to be exposed. Some lies need to be confronted, not to punish, but to heal." Michael thought about that, about how his violation of Rachel's privacy had ultimately led to healing, to reconciliation, to Rachel becoming more whole. Sometimes love meant respecting boundaries. Sometimes it meant breaking them. A year after finding the box, Michael and Rachel traveled to Cedar Rapids together. It was Rachel's first time back in 16 years. She was terrified, but she was also ready. They stayed with Linda, met Tim's children, Rachel's nieces and nephews who'd never known they had an aunt, had dinner with all the siblings, visited Ronald's grave, where Rachel finally said goodbye to the father she'd lost twice. It wasn't perfect. There were difficult moments, awkward conversations, disagreements about the past, but there was also laughter, joy, connection, family. On their last night, Rachel stood in her childhood bedroom. It looked different. Linda had redecorated, but the bones were the same. "I spent so many years hating this place," Rachel said. "Viewing it as a prison I'd escaped, but now I can see it was just a house, just a family. Imperfect but not evil, flawed but not unlovable." "Can you forgive them?" Michael asked. "Really forgive them?" "I'm trying, it's hard. But I think maybe forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about accepting that everyone was doing their best with the tools they had. My parents made mistakes. I made mistakes. We all hurt each other, but we can still choose love going forward." They flew home with the metal box in Rachel's luggage, but now it was filled with new letters. Letters from Linda written after their reconciliation. Letters from Rachel's siblings catching her up on their lives. Letters from Rachel to her father that she'd leave at his grave next time she visited. The box that had once held secrets now held connection. Proof that families could heal. That estrangement wasn't permanent. That love could survive even 15 years of silence. Michael watched Rachel place the box on a shelf in their bedroom. Not hidden this time. Not locked. Just there. Part of their life. Part of their story. "I'm glad you opened it," Rachel said. "I'm glad you didn't let me keep running. I'm glad too, even though it almost destroyed us. It did destroy us, the US that was built on lies, but it let us build something better, something real, something honest." Michael pulled her close, kissed the top of her head, held the woman he loved, really loved, knowing all of her now, not just the parts she'd chosen to show him. Their marriage wasn't perfect. Trust took years to fully rebuild, but it was real. Finally, after 17 years together, it was completely, messily, beautifully real. And that was worth everything.